How many of you have ever felt like your job, your business, your career, your grades, your goals defines who you are as a person? Like if a project fails, you are a failure. Or if a big idea you have doesn't quite work out, that your confidence goes right out the door with it. Or maybe even that you just can't seem to quite work hard enough to be able to take time away guilt-free. Turns out you're not alone, and I was right there with you at one point. At 12 years old, my family bought an adventure resort. Whitewater rafting, ziplining, paintballing, cabins, camping. It was a child's paradise. By 14, I was answering reservation phone calls, living on the property in a tent down by the river all summer long. By 17, I was the full-blown operations manager, running all of the chaos and managing a team of 40 plus people. This place was my happy place. I was obsessed with it. By 20 years old, it was my personality. The success of it was my worth. My entire identity was riding on the fact that I was running this fun, chaotic, adventurous, all-consuming business. I was working 80-hour weeks, never leaving time to eat or sleep or leave the property. And all because I thought that is what it took to build a successful business. And we did that. Throughout my family's time there, we made this resort a major travel destination in the Midwest. We had sold out weekends, hundreds of customers every day, and an ever-growing team of staff members. But at 24, everything changed. Our business partner of 12 plus years, whom we considered to be family, suddenly cut us out of everything. And pretty much overnight, it was gone. Now, that's a story for another day, but I poured everything I had into this company for well over a decade. It was my go-to conversation piece in every small talk conversation. It was my fun fact in every icebreaker. It was my life plan to run it one day with my kids. And seemingly overnight, it was all gone. When you start a business, you dive into books, interviews, podcasts, anything we can get our hands on to figure out what it takes to bring this big idea to life. The current narrative we can find has us accepting all levels of exhaustion, self-sacrifice, and burnout as a badge of honor of building the big business and the freedom-filled life of our dreams. You see phrases like if your competition is outworking you, you've already lost, and you should really only enjoy 20% of your life as a business owner. Or my personal least favorite, you just quit your 9-to-5 to work 24/7 for yourself. Most people start businesses to build freedom, chase a dream, or to create a life that they've always wanted. And in the beginning, that passion takes over. It's kind of like a honeymoon phase. You're excited, you're determined, and you're willing to go to great lengths to make this big idea come to life. But what happens when you're met with seeing phrases like that from a business icon you've always looked up to, but is actually unfulfilled and burnt out behind the scenes? What happens when you keep on pushing because it's what you're being told is needed and necessary in order to make all of this hard work pay off, until you've gone month after month, year after year, and you push through dinners, weekends, memories, until all of your own personal routines, rituals, relationships are gone. You justify it by saying, well, this is just what living the life of a business owner looks like, and you keep on pushing until all of your fulfillment, happiness, and emotions live or die based on the outcomes of your business and your achievements. You might still love it, you might still want it to be successful, but your relationship with it has actually become toxic. I poured everything I had into my family's business, my life plan, my hobbies, my friendships, my summers, my childhood, my self-worth, and when it went away, a lot of those things went with it. I was left asking, who am I really? Who do I even really want to be? And what do I now want my life to look like moving forward? Some may call this an identity crisis. I called it the beginning of the Freepreneur Lifestyle. So I moved across the country to a small town in Washington with my now fiance, running a business of my own, and everything kind of started to change. When I met people here, none of them introduced themselves based on their job titles or their careers. They introduced themselves based on their interests, their hobbies, and the things that truly fulfilled them. Some said, I'm a writer, I'm a dancer, I'm a kiteboarder, I'm a whitewater kayaker, I'm a hunter. And I actually found it refreshing. I often found myself asking, what do these people all even do for a living? And when I did ask, they all had successful businesses, careers, projects, families, but it just wasn't how they actually defined themselves. And I wanted that. I wanted to be able to be ambitious without having the guilt of never being able to take a step away. I wanted a life where my emotions weren't dictated on the outcomes of my business. One where I felt worthy as who I am, no matter what was happening with the things that I was constantly trying to achieve. So as one does, I opened up a fresh Pinterest board and named it something cheesy yet inspiring, and I started to fill it with the things that I always wanted to do, but I never quite made the time for it because my business was always at the forefront. I filled it with things like pottery, yoga, hiking, health, wellness, and I didn't just sprinkle them in, I started to actually make them a priority. And when I did this, everything else got better. When I started to fulfill myself personally and do more things that made me truly feel like me, my professional outcomes actually improved. My productivity soared, my creativity was way better, my mental clarity improved, and above all else, that stress and that pressure to constantly achieve and the guilt of taking time away began to melt away. When I started to do things that actually refueled me, gave me rest, my business actually grew faster. I started to think of my business as something that I am truly forever going to be working on, rather than as a way to find all of the fulfillments that I was craving in life. And it actually made my business grow. And at this point, I was working with product-based business owners every day to help them grow their online presence and their brands. And I started to realize that I wasn't alone in this, that many, like I had sunk their self-worth into the outcomes and the success of their business. Many were stuck in that same cycle when something would inevitably go wrong, their insecurities would pop up, their doubts would come in, and they were started to tell themselves these narratives of, I should have just worked harder, I should have just been better, I should have just stayed up later and something would have been different. A narrative that they learned in those books, interviews, and podcasts that we talked about earlier. One that leaves entrepreneurs burnt out, unfulfilled, and constantly self-sacrificing. So what I started to do is I started to input this ideology into their businesses as well. And at one point, I actually realized that when the business owners put time and effort into fulfilling themselves outside of their business through rest, hobbies, routines, their businesses actually started to grow faster, like mine did. And they get to enjoy the process, prevent burnout, and actually live a more fulfilled life while they do it. If we are constantly pushing ourselves through these moments of exhaustion, we will never actually be productive in the long run. We would be better off taking a moment, doing something that refuels us, having a little bit of rest, and coming back more productive on the other side. Imagine a world where success as a business owner isn't synonymous with 80-hour work weeks and chronic exhaustion. A world where we have a life that is so fulfilling that our business is just a piece of that balanced existence, not our entire identity. This is what the Freepreneur Lifestyle is. And we can start that in 4 easy steps. First, define your freedom. This looks different for everybody, but what does your ideal life and day look like? Do you want time freedom, financial freedom, location freedom? We can't create something we can't define, so we have to start there. Second, figure out who you are outside of your business. What are the things that you have put off or that you let go of because you had your achievements at the forefront? And don't just sprinkle them in because we all know it probably wouldn't end up happening. Actually make them a priority. Third, you have to reject the narrative that overworking yourself is necessary in order to make all of your achievements happen. Just because it's common doesn't mean it needs to be your normal, but your business does need to be run differently if you are going to have a different life than the average person. Lastly, you have to commit to the Freepreneur Lifestyle. The next time you desperately need a good idea, instead of sitting there and really pushing yourself to come up with it, go for a walk or do a creative hobby. The next Friday that you really wish you didn't have to push through that weekend and work, why don't you actually take the weekend off and come back on Monday more productive? Or maybe you just had a long day and you're feeling like you should probably keep pushing and work those late hours. Instead, why don't we play some games with our family and come back the next morning refueled and ready to conquer it all? Now, don't get me wrong. I know a lot of you are thinking, what, is she just telling me to take up a good hobby and my business is going to grow? This isn't about putting your business on the back burner. We love our businesses. That's why we're here. This is about finding balance and harmony within your schedule of the personal and the professional. It's about weaving in daily, weekly, restful routines that actually allow you to, every time you sit down, to actually be your best business owner self. And this message can go for anybody. It's not just entrepreneurs. Whether you're a teacher, whether you're a student, a CEO, a parent, the message remains the same. Don't let your work define wholly who you are. Find your fulfillment in who you are at your core and the things that truly make you feel like you, and then weave everything else in, trusting that on the other side of rest, you will actually be a more productive professional. Now, if you want to have it all, you have the full life as well as prevent the burnout with all of the success and the career and the ambitions, you don't have to be woven into the pattern like the rest. You are the loose thread to get there. You get to decide to change the narrative. You get to decide to embrace the Freepreneur lifestyle.